Faith comes by hearing, and hearing of the word of the Lord. But the question is, how do the people in what we call the 1040 window, which is that red rectangle there between latitude lines 10 and latitude line 40, and running from the east coast of China to the west coast of Africa. In that rectangle, 2/3 of the world's population live. 85% of them are in the 1040 window are the poorest of the world's poor, and less than 1/10 of 1% have ever heard of Jesus Christ. And more than that, many of the countries in that 1040 window have laws that prevent evangelism or people that want to go in and share their faith from going there. And the penalty is, if you do, the penalty is death. And also for anybody in the country that wants to listen to somebody share their faith, the penalty is death. So it's a challenge. And that's why the Adventist Church decided to set up shortwave towers in this little island over here called Guam. And these are the towers on Guam Island. And they can reach halfway across that rectangle, but now they've installed booster towers at strategic places. They can now cover the entire area with shortwave radio. And these are the 61 countries that lie in that rectangle there, that red 1040 window. And Adventist World Radio is operating in around 100 different languages now, broadcasting about 100 different languages. But when you think that in 2009, the Linguistic Society said they have identified 6,009 different languages in the world, and the Bible has been translated into roughly 2,500 of those languages, or parts of the Bible, operating in 100 languages isn't all that big a piece of the pie. And so they're striving to get to 500 different languages in the near future. Okay, now let's take a look at some of the countries that they have been working in. Let's start off with the Philippines. First of all, I'd like to share with you how the mission emphasis is taking place these days in the mission field. Rather than get one or two evangelists and try and get as many people into a building as you can, they've changed the concept. What they've done is they've gotten Mark Finley to prepare a set of evangelistic sermons in PowerPoint form with PowerPoint slides, and then write out the narrative for the various slides. And what they're doing now is asking lay people to come out and present these slides to the people. So rather than having the people come to the big building, they are going out to the people. They tried this first of all in Rwanda in 2016. They had 2,227 different people agree to present those slides. And they had them not in churches only, but in business offices, in schools, in homes where there are only 2 or 3 people. And at the end of that series, they baptized over 97,000 people. Amen. So the technique is working, and that's how they're doing. And what they often do, most of the time they do, is they send out a medical team in advance. And they provide free medical care to the people. And then Adventist World Radio comes with their booming power, with their shortwave power, and broadcasts that they're going to be having services here and there and get the people interest. And then when the lay people go out, the people do come to the meetings. It's quite a technique that's working. And also, what we're finding is that I don't care where it is in the hills, how high in the hills, if there's a group of people out there, you'll find 2 things: a cell phone and a radio. Radio similar to this. This is a radio. It has FM band on it, AM band on it, and 2 shortwave bands on it. It has a little pocket back here that'll operate it with 2 AAA batteries. It also has another pocket that has rechargeable batteries in it that you can charge by, if you have power connected to your computer or to an outlet, Or if you have sunshine, it has a solar panel on the top here. That'll charge it. And if you don't have batteries or power or sunshine, you can do it by just turning the crank. You can charge those batteries. I don't care where this radio is going to go. It's going to work. And if you put up this antenna, the shortwave radio or the radio signals will find it, and it'll present its message. And Adventist World Radio gives these away by the hundreds, even to the thousands, once they get into an area. Okay, so in Mildura, they began broadcasting in 2017, wanting to reach remote areas of the island. There are now 101 villages. And the 101 villages comes from lay people going out to these villages and sharing the message there. There are another 101 villages studying to be Seventh-day Adventists, and over 6,000 have been baptized to date. Now, before I read the latter part of that, I need to tell you about the NPA, which stands for the New People's Army. That really is a communist guerrilla group that has been there since 1969. The government of Philippines has never been able to eradicate them and get them out, and their main objective is to overthrow the existing government. They have moved, the NPA has moved into the hill of the country of Mildura, and they've taken over the hillsides and the towns, and they collect the taxes from the people and use that to support the NPA, the New People's Army. And their total objective is to assassinate the governmental officials and to ambush military maneuvers. That's their whole objective. And they've been doing this for over 50 years. Some of the young people in the army there, they don't know anything else. They've lived in the hills and they've grown up. What they do is they know how to handle AK-47s and shoot people and governmental officials and military personnel. That's what they do. But some of them are getting tired of that, and they have radios. And they've been listening to Adventist World Radios of Hope. And one day, 4 of them ended up waiting for one of the broadcasters of the Voice of Hope for Adventist World Radio. They were waiting at his door when he got home. To their intelligence, they learned who was broadcasting, where he lived, and they waited for him. And when he came home, he said, "Whoa, what's going on here?" Well, he said, "We want you to come up and talk to our people." What attracted them was the health message that Adventist World Radio has incorporated into their broadcasts. "We need you to come up and teach our people." Well, he was a little bit leery, and but after meeting with the church people and so on, they decided to go up and meet with these people, and as a result, 6 generals were baptized. Amen. And just recently, we got word that 6 more generals and 18 soldiers have been baptized recently. In April, this coming April, there is a 5-star general scheduled to be baptized. He's got 13 warrants out for his arrest and $41,000 price tag on his head for anybody who will help capture him. He says, "I'm tired of this life." And when he heard the gospel, he says, "I want a new life." And so he's planning to lay down his guns and to be baptized into the Adventist church. And there are 15 other generals that are saying, well, if things go good for him, we're going to follow suit. So that is some of the effects that Adventist World Radio is having. Okay. Now, this is what's happened in India in the past year. They've had 705 meetings, different meetings, and 48 of the evangelists were from Adventist World Radio itself. But the total attendance was about 75,000 people. Baptisms to date is 14,878. Total medical clinics, medical services that they've held were 17. And total patients about 7,475, and eye surgeries 278 in the past year. In Zambia, in 2018, more than 1,000 simultaneous meetings were held in the capital city alone. And there, almost 18,000 baptisms at the conclusion of the meetings. 80% of them who came to the meeting said they became because they had been listening to the radio. Wow. Now, I need to tell you a little bit more about Zambia. That picture you see there is in their highest security prison. And Adventist World Radio put a tower up in Zambia, and it happened to be closest to the prison than any other tower. So its signal is the strongest that comes into the prison. And therefore, the prisoners listen to it a lot. And as a result, over 800 prisoners in that prison have been baptized.
Amen.
And of those, 50 of them are on death row. The prisoners you see in the bright orange jumpsuits are on death row. There's no possible reprieve, parole, or anything. They will die, but they will die within the hope of the resurrection. Amen. Because of Adventist World Radio. Now, I want to move to cell phone evangelism. As I said, every place you go, you'll find a radio and a cell phone. A person by the name of Neveling from Australia got the idea that we can present this message through the cell phone. And so he took the messages and broke them up into 10-minute sound bites, like videos and stuff. Took a whole sermon and broke it up into 4 or 5 sections that you can text to somebody, and then they can listen to the sermon in pieces like that. Well, this church, which is an unnamed location because of security issues, they went into their community service groups that went from house to house, helping people with their basic needs, like simple home repairs to yard work. They then prayed with them and asked if they would like to receive messages of hope from the AWR through their cell phones. Amazingly, more than 3,700 people, 37,000 people responded saying, yes, please send me those messages on my cell phone. And this group right now is being prepared to use their cell phones to do cell phone evangelism. Now, how does it work? They're using what they call chatbot, which is an application that WhatsApp or the simple mail system uses. And what it will do is you can register to be an evangelist and then give the names or cell phone numbers of people you'd like to send the messages to, and chatbot will automatically send the messages for you. You don't even have to bother sending them. The only thing you have to do is keep in touch with the person, ask them if there's anything you can do that would you like them to pray about or whatever, and encourage them, and so on. And chatbot will take care of sending them the messages to them automatically. We just learned about this. Sunday I learned about this. Last weekend, like a week ago tonight, I was in Fort Charlotte, Florida, where Adventist World Radio was holding a rally for us ambassadors, and they told us how they had set this up. Now, to get started, all you need to do is type the word info to that phone number up there. And if anybody wants to get really interested, I have some cards I can give you that has that phone number on it. You type into that phone number, and it will text you all the instructions to get started and how to operate. That's what I've done so far. I've got the instructions, but I haven't gotten any further yet. I just haven't had time. But I will. I will get involved. And it's quite a way of using cell phone to do evangelism as well. Now, in the ministry of healing, we're told that every human being is the object of loving interest to Him who gave His life that He might bring men back to God. We've been talking about how things are working in mass groupings. Does God really focus on one person and reach out to that person? Well, watch this video.
Welcome to a country shared by thousands of animals, over 120 different tribal groups, and home to some of Africa's most famous national parks.
I'm in Tanzania, and this is AWR360.
My name is Michael, and I live in the northern part of Tanzania. I have a beautiful wife and family, and grow vegetables to sell.
As a teenager, Michael had embraced the Seventh-day Adventist message, but as the years passed by, he laid aside his faith and slowly forgot about God. Michael settled down, married, and began to put all his time and energy into growing vegetables for sale. He took pride in his beautiful garden and always kept it neat. Then one day, something happened that would disrupt their peaceful, quiet lives and ruin Michael's garden.
I started having terrible problem. Wild pigs would come into my garden at night, destroying my plants and eating my vegetables. In order to protect the crops, I began staying up all night to keep watch.
One evening, as he kindled a fire and prepared for another long night, Michael switched on his radio. The station playing was new to him, but the words sounded strangely familiar. It had been so many years since he had heard anything about Jesus. It was all such a distant memory. The night passed more quickly this time, and when morning broke, Michael's little radio was still playing the station he would later learn was Adventist World Radio. The second night, Michael again turned his radio to AWR and this time invited 5 of his neighbors to come listen as well.
On the third night, a message about faith was presented on the radio. My heart was touched, and I said to my friends, if there is a God big enough to protect our crops, why are we staying up the whole night?
Michael decided he would give God a second chance. In an effort to test and see if God was real, Michael remained home the next night instead of going out and watching over his crops. Before bed, he gathered his family together to listen to AWR and pray for God's protection. The next morning, Michael went outside to survey his crops. Amazingly, there was no damage.
I was so excited and went running back to share the good news with my family. For the first time in my life, I realized that God was real and cared for me.
Night after night, Michael returned home, listened to his radio, and once again prayed for God's protection before peacefully sleeping. Michael's neighbors began to ask questions. They had watched as the pigs passed by Michael's fields, only to eat their surrounding crops. The neighbors felt sure it was witchcraft. But Michael gladly explained about the radio and a God who would even protect vegetables from pigs.
Several of my neighbors decided to test God too and listen to AWR at home instead of guarding their crops at night. And the pigs no longer bothered their vegetables either.
Before long, Michael, his family, and 30 other people from his village decided to give their lives to Jesus through baptism.
We are so thankful for Adventist World Radio. If we had not heard it, we would still be out in the dark, guarding our crops from pigs, and would have missed hearing about Jesus.
3 years later, Michael's garden continues to grow well, and the wild pigs have never returned. Michael loves to tell everyone about Jesus, and with a big smile, shared with us that he is a missionary now. His love for Jesus and the Seventh-day Adventist Church has been rekindled, and he has a passion born from a personal experience of faith and trust. And all of this is the simple result of a radio broadcast and a God big enough to answer prayer.
Thank you for your generous support of Adventist World Radio. Through it, lives are being touched and transformed for eternity. From broadcast to baptism, this is AWR 360.
Is it an amazing God will even use wild pigs to grab your attention if it works? He'll do anything to draw you back to him. Now, I'd like to share with you what's going to happen in Papua New Guinea. There's a big total member involvement planned for April. Well, actually the 1st of May. Right in March, they're sending out the medical team to provide medical services. And then the evangelist team will follow after that. In the Western Highland Mission, they have asked every church member to pray for 7 people that will be brought to baptism. The most amazing thing is they have the names of all these people that are being prayed for, in excess of 330,000 people. And they have the names of all, and I'm praying for them. Over 50,000 are currently in baptismal classes. And just in the first and second quarter of 2019, 13 Sunday churches have converted to Adventist churches. Amen. And this was interesting because the ministers of these churches came to the Adventist conference in that area and said, we want to turn our churches into Adventist churches. And our church leader said, well, that's all very interesting, but what about your church members? And they said, they're the ones that are pushing us to do it. So they had all been listening to Adventist World Radio as well. In anticipation of the explosive increase in membership next year, they have already put up over 300 new church buildings, but these now are already full with people that are looking forward to baptism. They now are planning to have 2,000 TMI evangelists, evangelistic sites planned by Adventist World Radio all across the country, and are working with an interest list of 300,000 people. When Elder McKee, president of Adventist World Radio, said to them, aren't you being a little bit over optimistically, 300,000 people? And they said, but Elder McKee, we already have 10,000 in just one baptismal class. And also, they're looking for the best places for radio towers so Adventist World Radio can be broadcast throughout as much of the island as possible by January, because they want to be broadcasting about the evangelistic services that are coming up in May. Now, the Desire of Ages tells us that God is bending from his throne to hear the cry of the oppressed. To every sincere prayer he answers, here I am. I don't know how many worlds God has created or how many beings are on these other worlds, but isn't it a humbling thought to think this one world that has fallen away in sin is the one he's bending over, listening for that cry for help.